Hello, I'm Glenda Adkisson with the American Red Cross, and I'm glad you joined us today. We're going to be discussing winter weather and what you can do to be safe during winter weather. I'm so glad to have two guests with me today. First, we have Mike Nadolski, and he is with the National Weather Service. He's the Observation Project Manager. Did I get that right,
That's
Mike?
fine.
Okay. And Beau Dodson, a long-time American Red Cross volunteer who is also currently working on his broadcast meteorology degree. And Mike, if you would just tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of what you do there at for the National Weather Service.
Sure, Glenda. I've been with the Weather Service now over 30 years and to a number of different offices throughout the country. And here in Paducah, I've been here almost 10 years. And what I do at Paducah is I oversee all the programs that deal with data. Data coming into the office, data leaving the office, ensuring that it's the highest quality data that it can possibly be.
And Beau, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing currently with the meteorology program?
Yes. Currently I'm in a meteorology program, broadcast meteorology program out of Mississippi State. I work locally with the emergency management in McCracken County and Ballard County as well, severe weather spotting, and cover the radios. And also do disaster vice chair for the American Red Cross. So in the event of a disaster, we would open shelters or handle food, feeding, that kind of stuff. So I've lived here pretty much all my life. I've lived a few other places, but I grew up in southern Illinois, Massac County, and then I lived in Paducah for the last 3 or 4 years.
Oh, great. Well, you know, there are a lot of people, including myself, that do not necessarily know that much about the weather trends and how storms develop, and so that is important for us to know. And Mike, if you can share a little bit with us, I think it's important and helpful if people can understand a little more about things that they hear on the news. For example, when they listen to the weather and they say, okay, we have a winter storm warning, or a winter storm, a winter weather advisory, a warning. Can you kind of give us an outline of the differences between those?
Well, the watch, like a winter storm watch, and that basically is informing people, trying to heighten their awareness that something will be coming. In the fact that it could be heavy snow, it could be freezing rain, it could be a combination of freezing rain, snow, sleet, something that is going to impact the populace. An advisory means there's going to be some inconveniences to the weather. Like what we just had, maybe a 1 or 2 inch snowfall, and that's where it'll impact people, but it's not going to be to where people will have to stay in, or they'll be snowed in, or the freezing rain will cause massive power outages like you just saw out in the Kansas City area and Oklahoma area. A winter storm warning means that the storm will be here in about 24 hours. So time to prepare, make sure that what your plan that you have in place is in place, and if the storm does strike with full force, that you will be ready for it.
Well, and Beau, you had discussed several times the fact that predicting weather in this area is difficult. Can you tell us a little bit about why that is an issue, particularly in the Paducah area?
Well, during the winter months especially, winter storms are hard to predict. The exact path of the low pressure area, a lot of times it may pass through Louisiana or Tennessee. The last one passed through western Kentucky. That track is important because you want to be on the north side of the low in order to get snow around here. And just a few miles, 30, 40 miles could make all the difference. Recent snowstorms, you may get a foot of snow in St. Louis, you may get an inch of snow in Carbondale, you may get flurries in Paducah. Just a few miles makes all the difference. In the spring and summer months, if the National Weather Service is forecasting rain or thunderstorms, some areas may get hit by that, some areas may not. Most people don't really care. But when it comes to snow, just a little bit of snow can have a major impact on the entire region. So if you miss a snow forecast, it seems to be a little more important around here than when you miss a rain forecast. And those the paths of those low are so tricky to forecast sometimes, and the computer models still aren't perfect. And you have to sometimes go by your gut on what it's going to do, and you mix that in with the models and you try to determine the exact path of that storm system. But like I said, just a slight change in the path could bring heavy snow to Paducah, whereas a slight change further north of the low may track further north, we may end up with just rain. Makes it real tricky, I think, in this region, more so than some of the other areas that in the Midwest that get snow on a regular basis.
Right, and we don't get snow necessarily on a regular basis here, but we do have some snow.
Right.
About Mike, about how much? What is the average snowfall in this area?
In Paducah, our average snowfall is right around 10 inches. There are some winters where we've had, a trace, to where some winters we've had up to maybe around 20. It just depends, as Beau was saying. I mean, that track of the storm, 50 miles to the west, could be the difference between heavy rain, possibly thunderstorms, even severe weather, like tornadoes and that, which we've seen during portions of November and January and February, to where we could just be absolutely just snowed in like we had in the winter of the snowstorm of 2004 in December.
Right, and Beau, you were very involved with the American Red Cross in 2004, as you are now. And can you tell us a little bit about that season? I know that we had a big snowstorm in 06 too, I believe, and then 04. But in 2004, I know we had quite a few fires, and there were several things that were going on, and several impacts or ways that I guess you'd say the storm impacted the community. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the 2004 winter storm, it was several storms that happened over a 2-day period, and it was probably one of the larger snowfalls in this region since the late 1970s, the blizzards of the 1970s, when the area received 10 to as much as 18, 19 inches of snow. The 2004 snow brought 12, 13, 14 inches to the Paducah itself. Other areas of southern Illinois had even more than that. And then accompanied that were high winds and drifting, and this caused major problems. Interstate 24 at one point had thousands of cars backed up because of all the snow falling, and the state was not able to keep up with it because the snowfall rates were so high. The snow was just coming down so hard, it was impossible to clear the roads. And once a few cars had accidents, that kind of spiraled out of control. So cars ended up stranded in the snow for hours on end. And as a matter of fact, the American Red Cross had to open several shelters in western Kentucky. We didn't have to open one in McCracken, although we were close to doing that. Had it got any worse, I believe we would have had to open a shelter. And not only that, but bitterly cold air came in after that storm. I believe the temperature fell 0 to -10 across the area in the days after the snow. And that caused a lot of problems with fires and people not using their space heaters properly, and for other reasons, chimneys not being cleaned properly, caused a lot of fires. And I know that the McCracken County chapter had to be involved with quite a few of those, and that was just our county. Across the entire area in the Ohio Valley, there was hundreds of fires, house fires. I don't remember the death toll from that winter storm, but it was fairly substantial because of car accidents and fires. And also to the economy. It was right before Christmas, and a lot of Kentucky Oaks Mall had to close. A lot of stores closed, and it was in the hundreds of millions of dollars. I believe at one point I read $700-something million to the economy. That was a major winter storm for this region.
And I believe there were places in this area that had roof collapse.
Mm-hmm.
There was a building that once the roof caves in, obviously they cannot carry on business for a while. It takes some time to get that fixed. And that is a key issue here, especially when we're talking about being prepared and taking ownership and responsibility for your own preparedness. While there are organizations that want to help people in need and take care of them in a crisis situation, the fact is, if there is ice on the ground, there's a big snowstorm, people simply may not be able to get to you very quickly. And Mike, as we discussed, both of us have been in Ohio. I know you said that you lived in Ohio, and sometimes if people are in an area where it's cold every day during the wintertime, they get snowstorm and snow after snow, and it stays on the ground, they tend to go out the door every day, and they are already prepared for cold weather. whereas we live in a milder climate, so often we head out the door kind of dressed like we normally would.
Right.
In the wintertime, and maybe we haven't listened to the weather and we weren't thinking about what's coming our way. Maybe we're not dressed in layers, and like Beau, like you mentioned, maybe there's an accident on the highway. Mike, what are some things that you would say as far as the National Weather Service, along with the Red Cross, that we promote as far as how do you prepare and what you're wearing, for example?
One of the first things you want to do is you want to use common sense, and you also want to get the information. And places you can get the information, of course, are No Weather Radio, local television, the Red Cross website. I mean, there are different websites you can go to get this information, which will tell you in cold weather you want to dress in layers, and you want to make sure that with those layers they insulate you. And if you're perspiring, you will take off that part of your attire that is wet, replace it with another layer of clothing. That will help. Also, common sense in the fact of if they're forecasting something like 12 to 18 inches of snow, and you look outside and you say, that's a whiteout out there, but I'm still going to work, or I'm still going here and that. The common sense of saying, maybe I should just stay put because one less person out there means a possibility of one less statistic. So we have to use, I believe, it's personal responsibility and common sense.
Right. Beau, I know that you are very big in promoting weather radios, and this is something that people obviously need to be informed. Can you tell us a little bit about a weather radio and how to operate these, and when you should turn them on? Should you keep them on all the time? Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I brought a weather radio today. You can purchase weather radios. Walmart, the Kentucky Oaks Mall Radio Shack has them. Different stores in the region. And what it is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can push this button and hear the forecast. You can hear current conditions. You can hear watches. You can hear warnings, lake and river stages. Many things that might interest farmers in the region, and not just farmers, but everyone. If you want to know the weather forecast straight from the National Weather Service, this is how you would receive that. But more importantly is during severe weather, tornado warnings, winter storm watches, warnings, is NOAA Weather Radio will sound an alarm. And you can program it. Some of them you can actually program in and out what particular watches and warnings you want to receive. So if you don't live in a flood-prone area and you don't want to be woke up for a flash flood warning, you can program that out of some of the models. But if you would like to receive the tornado watches and warnings, winter storm watches and warnings, it'll go off and it'll sound an alarm, and you just push the button, and at that point it will tell you the information that you need to know. The safety information, it would tell you what towns, what counties are involved. In the case of a tornado, it would tell you what areas might be hit. In case of a winter storm, it might tell you how much snow is going to fall, over what period of time it would fall in. It would give information on wind chill, wind speed. So anything you need to know about driving conditions, you could get from the weather radio. And they're relatively inexpensive, and I look at them sort of like a smoke detector. It's something that, especially in this region, because our weather is it changes so often from severe weather to the winter storms even, it's important to have. And it's a good gift to get somebody. They're fairly easy to program, and even the National Weather Service occasionally has programming at the different areas, the mall, different cities they'll go in, and they'll have a day where they'll program your weather radio for you. But they're relatively inexpensive, and like I said, I look at them like smoke detectors. It's something that every home should have. Certainly in this region with tornadoes and the number of storms that have hit the mobile homes over the last few years, and it's good to be able to wake up in the middle of the night if a tornado warning's been issued in case you have to take shelter. It's one of those things that you really should have.
Well, and you mentioned in the middle of the night, and this is, of course, we're discussing winter storms, but when you mentioned tornadoes, it may just be my imagination, but it seems like a lot of tornadoes hit during the night. Is that more common than during the day, or is there a time of day, or is it just how it all kind of comes together as far as the weather?
Well, in this area, in fact, since the year 2000, for the Paducah area and the 58 counties that we cover, we have actually experienced the most severe to violent tornadoes throughout the country, and that includes Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, where Tornado Alley is. One of the things, and I'd like to add what Beau said, is the fact that the White House has even said that the second most important piece of equipment that you can have in your house, detection outside of your smoke detector and your carbon monoxide detector, is an all-weather radio, because that will wake you up. That will wake you up out of a dead sleep with the alarms that it has. So it's a very important piece of equipment. As for the tornado, getting back to the tornadoes, as back in 2000, I believe it was, we had on January 3rd, we had an F3 tornado that went through downtown Owensboro. And think January 3rd, well, this is winter time. Well, that's an F3 tornado that went through with winds in excess of 150 miles an hour. So.
And you don't expect those during the winter time. You just expect that people that are casual weather observers.
I think more people down here are probably more in tune with them. Where if this was up in Columbus, up in northern Indiana, something like that, you're right, we would not be in tune to that, and we probably would not be as prepared for that kind of weather. But it does happen.
Well, and that's part of being, going back to being informed.
Right.
Weather patterns are very different, and even if you move to a new town, if within the same state, those weather patterns, what's maybe common in one area is it's going to vary. And when we get used to living a certain way, dressing a certain way, and we go to a new area, it's important to be informed about that, and not just where we're living, but also where we're traveling. Now, I personally enjoy snow. I love snow skiing. I love the winter, going out and playing in the snow. And certainly you want to be safe, and of course I also enjoy sitting by a nice cozy fireplace, but the fact is, fire, when it is out of hand, is very dangerous and very destructive, even though it can be very enjoyable. Same thing is true with snow. It can be very enjoyable. Many people do snow ski, but it is also very deadly at times, and dozens of people die every year because of cold weather related deaths, whether it is car accidents or it is hypothermia. And as far as hypothermia, and I know at the National Weather Service, and Beau, I know that you have taught preparedness courses, and you are one of our instructors at the American Red Cross for disaster response and preparedness. Tell us a little bit about hypothermia versus frostbite, and what people, do you want to share what people should do and how they should handle each of those kinds of things, and what the symptoms are? What do you look for?
Well, with hypothermia, there's two things you need to be concerned about. There's hypothermia and frostbite, like you said. Hypothermia is when your body temperature drops below, I believe, 95 degrees, and that can happen. It can happen fast, or it can happen slowly. A lot of times when it happens slowly, you don't realize what's going on. You can be outside. A lot of people work in the outdoors in the winter, and some of the symptoms would be uncontrollable shaking or shivering, maybe chattering of your teeth. That would be one of the initial symptoms. And then disorientation, slurred speech. There's one other one, slurred speech, disorientation, loss of memory. And if somebody's acting like that, maybe it's raining outside and the temperatures, they don't have to be below freezing. You can have temperatures in the 50s, 40s, it's raining, and someone has those signs, they're probably experiencing hypothermia. And what you want to do is you want to bring them inside. You don't want to put them in hot water. You don't want to put them in a hot shower. You want to slowly warm their body temperature back up. And you would do that by not giving them a hot beverage, but by giving them a warm beverage. You want to slowly warm their body back up. Same with frostbite. Early symptoms could be tingling sensation, an actual burning sensation of your hands. Eventually your fingers or your ears, even the tip of your nose, toes, would turn like an ashen whitish color. Severe frostbite would actually turn black, but that initial stages of it, you would feel a burning and tingling. And again, you don't want to there's a myth that says you rub snow on your hands. You don't want to do that. You don't want to run hot water over your hands. What you want to do is slowly warm the body back up. And you can do that by putting your hands under your armpits, You can do the same thing with the warm beverage, slowly bring your body temperature back up. And of course, in either case, you want to try to get the person medical attention. So call 911, get the person to a hospital if you believe it is that severe. Hypothermia and frostbite can occur rather quickly. Around here, we don't have the extreme wind chills like you might see in South Dakota, North Dakota, 60 below, 50 below, but certainly wind chills of 0 to 10 below. It can take 5 minutes or less to cause frostbite if someone is out there, a child maybe without gloves, or someone who's working outside. It can come on quite rapidly.
Right, and as we discussed, again, people are going to be traveling. Sometimes people purposely travel to snow. Sometimes they're just traveling and they happen to get caught in a storm. And so at the Red Cross, we promote and have promoted for a long time, be Red Cross ready, which is making a kit, make a plan, and be informed. A kit, whenever we winterize our kits, is going to include some special things for winter. Can you tell us at the National Weather Service what you all also promote as far as the winterizing your preparedness kit?
Right. Basically the same thing that the Red Cross does in the fact of make sure you have extra clothing, non-perishable food with you, blankets. If you do get caught, say you're in a vehicle, there are certain steps to take to where if you're off the side of the road to where you would like run your car for like every 10 minutes, make sure that the window is cracked so carbon monoxide doesn't build up. You want to make sure that the tailpipe would be clear of anything to where the carbon monoxide would back up if it wasn't free and clear. So basically the Red Cross and the Weather Service, they're almost identical in what we promote and you know what you should have. So you should have sand or kitty litter for traction, and a shovel and chains and you know just certain things that you would put in that kit to take with you in case you do get stuck or in case you do run into a storm. And the other thing is too, again, we'll go back to the common sense. If you're traveling and you hit, say, we're up in northeast Ohio and you hit a lake effect squall, you want to slow down. You don't want to speed up. You want to slow down because as you're going along and you hit that patch of ice, you're out of control. Where you slow down, you might be able to not, you know, spin out as fast, or you could be able to regain control.
Right, and certainly the further south you go, the less equipment people have to clear the roads, and it would not make sense for them to invest that kind of money into clearing roads at the same level that you would invest further north, simply because we don't have the frequency. And you also tend to get more ice here. Is that correct? You get a lot of ice patterns, whereas the further north you go, it tends to be you get the snow more often. Some other things as far as the preparedness kit, certainly a sleeping bag's not a bad idea, a blanket. Sometimes I've carried blankets in my car just simply because, you know, go into a nice restaurant, you're warm, you've been having a nice dinner, and you go out and you start shivering and you know, it's kind of nice having a blanket. But if you're stuck on the road, you really need to make sure that you have a blanket. Money. Sometimes you may need cash.
Right.
If transportation is an issue, you may need to have cash on hand. Certainly people, if they're traveling, are going to have their pets, so you want to make sure that you have extra food. And I think a thing to think about too is not assuming that I'm just going to run up to the store or I'm going to go somewhere and so I won't need to have my jacket, because you never know. You never know when there's going to be an accident on the highway and that's going to interrupt, you know, travel, and you may get stuck somewhere. Beau, anything else that you would think of as far as the winter kit in preparing?
Well, one thing I think is important to add to what Mike said is to let somebody know where you're going. Let somebody know what time you expected to arrive, that you're going to absolutely call them, especially in bad weather. I mean, this goes on any given day if you're going to be traveling long distance. But even short distances on a winter storm day, let somebody know, hey, I'm going to call you, let you know that I made it home. And if I don't call you, then there may be something wrong. That's probably one of the more important things that I would add, is just let someone else know what your plans are.
Well, and that's exactly the second part of our Be Red Cross Ready is make a plan. And making a plan is also knowing who you're going to call and having their phone numbers. This is an important thing when often we have our phone numbers stored in our cell phone. So, you know, you have it on speed dial or you just scroll down. Well, if something were to happen that maybe your cell phone was not working or maybe it died and you needed to, you know, you need to have those phone numbers written out in your preparedness kit. And the being informed as far as where do I look? You know, if there's an advisory, that weather website. Can you tell us one more time about that? What your website is?
It's www.weather.gov/PAH. There you can find all kinds of information, both on the local forecast, the extended forecast, radar information, but you can also find information on the storm kit, storm ready kits, and what you would need for that kit for, you know, when you are traveling. One of the things to add too, with what Beau had said was, and you alluded to, was your cell phone. One of the things that they're promoting too is to make sure that you have a cell phone charger with you in that kit, because if your car is still running in that, you could plug it in, and if the battery is still good, you could plug it in and recharge your phone or use it as it's charging. So that's another new item to put in that kit as a charger for your cell phone. Right,
and those emergency portable emergency cell phone chargers. There are so many things that we can do, and truly wintertime can be very enjoyable. Many of us love the snow and we enjoy being in it, but let's all be safe. And so thank you so much, both of you, for the information that you've shared with us today. The Red Cross has brochures on preparedness for winter weather, and you certainly can pick those up at the Red Cross. You can go to our website, which is www.paducahredcross.org. You can go to the National Weather Service and look at the preparedness information there, as well as the weather information. And you can also call us. Our phone number at the American Red Cross is 442-3575. And we just certainly hope you have a very enjoyable winter and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.